So let's look at part 4 of the mystery shawl. So this time I decided to add some lace. All the stitches you're using in this lace pattern you've used before. You've used SSK and knit 2 together and yarn overs in the edging, and you used slip-on knit 2 together past slip stitch over in this lace pattern here. So there are no new stitches in this section. It's just they're just being put together in a different way. So we're creating little leaf shapes, and if you look at the leaves, you can see in the middle there's like a row of yarn overs either side of a center stitch. So I'm going to show you how to knit this, and I'm mainly going to focus on, I'm not going to show you the individual stitches step by step because you've already done them. So we're going to focus on how you can read your knitting and try and make sure you're on the right track. So I'm going to use the chart. You can use the written instructions if you want to, but if you haven't tried charts, I do recommend you have a go at the chart. So just to quickly refresh how to read the chart. The charts are read from the bottom to the top, so you can see row 1 is down here. Right side rows are read from right to left, and wrong side rows from left to right. So you can see number 1 is there, so you go that way, number 2 that way, number 3 that way, number 4 that way. Each square is a stitch and each symbol has a meaning. So you need to look at the chart key, so you'll see even the white squares have a meaning. In this pattern, the white squares are knit on the right side and the wrong side. So the new symbols in this chart is the solid dots on the wrong side rows, and in this pattern they mean purl on the wrong side row. So this section, the edging is still in garter stitch, and the first 2 stitches are in garter stitch, but the rest, the lace section, is in stocking stitch. So the blue line here is where your marker is. If you've kept the marker in from the beginning, then when you get to the marker, you will be at that blue line. So I decided to mark that separately on the chart just to help you. So I've knitted the first 8 rows. I'm going to do row 9. Now on my swatch, I'm just knitting on a small swatch because my row is quite long on the chart. So, but another thing I want to point out, because we're changing colour, because we finished with pink from the previous chart and I'm changing to purple. So if you're changing colour, that row 1, our first stitch, on the very first row, knitted, don't slip it. So if you are changing colour, you can't slip it because you have to join in the new colour. So the very first time you knit row 1, just knit that first stitch. Next time you do it, you can slip it. So we're going to work the 16 rows twice. At the point of filming this, we may do row 1 to 8 one more time. I haven't quite decided. I need to weigh my yarn and make a decision. So I am going to show you how I look at the pattern and try and work out what I'm knitting without having to look at every stitch of the chart all the time. So I know that the first 5 stitches, I'm going to slip the first one, then I'm going to knit 4. And I've put a marker, because that's the beginning of the repeat, I've put a marker there. And I'm going to knit 1, knit 2 together, and then I'm going to do a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and that knit 1 in between the yarn overs is directly above the SK2PO 4 rows below. So I can see that one there, and I can follow that up. So I know I'm going to do a yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and then an SSK. And then I'm going to knit 3, and if I look at my chart, this knit 3 is above the yarn over, knit 1, and above the yarn over. So the yarn over, knit 1, yarn over from the previous pattern repeat, I know that my knit 3 is going to cover those 3 stitches. And then I'm going to knit 2 together, yarn over, knit 1, and that knit 1 sits directly above the SK2PO from a few rows ago. Knit 1, sorry, yarn over, SSK, and then I'm going to finish with a knit 1. Oh no, sorry, knit 2. I'm going to finish with a knit 2. Then I'm going to take the marker off, slip the marker, because I put a marker at the end of the pattern repeat as well. And then I'm doing knit 1, knit 2 together, yarn over, and then I'm just finishing with the knit 2. So I'm basically doing it till the blue line on the chart, but I'm doing the pattern repeat twice. And I've actually put the marker at the end of the pattern repeat. And then I'm just going to quickly do the wrong side row. So I haven't gone all the way to the edging because we've done the edging before. You've done the edging before, so you're probably fairly familiar with the edging now. So I'm not going to go across the edging. Okay, so we're on row 11 now. One thing I tend to try and do, and that's why I like knitting from charts, because doing it this way doesn't work if you're knitting from the written instructions. When you're knitting from the chart, from most patterns, and it's not all, but for most, you can kind of see the direction of your lace. So I can see here that my decreases form a diagonal line and that my yarn overs are stacked on top of each other. So I know that I'm going to start with slip on, then I'm going to knit 4. Move my marker. And I know that my decrease is going to be start 1 stitch before the decrease 2 rows ago. So I can see that that's my decrease on row 9. So I know that, which is that stitch there, that second stitch. So I know that I'm going to do a decrease now. Without even looking at the chart, I know that. And I know that my yarn over is going to be either side of that center knit 1 stitch, which means I have to knit that one, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. So that the yarn overs are stacked above the yarn overs from row 9. Then I'm going to knit 1, and that's my decrease on row 9, my SSK. So I know that I'm going to do an SSK with the stitch left from the previous SSK and the next stitch, so that I'm creating like a diagonal line. Let's split the yarn slightly there. And then I'm going to knit 1, which is directly above that center knit 1 from the yarn over knit 1 on the first 8 rows. Knit 2 together. So I know that my yarn over is going to be either side of that center knit 1, which means I have to knit 1. Now I'm knitting that one through the back loop, which I did mention, I think, in the first tutorial. Yarn over, knit 1, yarn over. So I can see those yarn overs are stacked on top of each other. Knit 1. SSK, this yarn is some yarn I got left over from a design I did for a magazine recently, and it's a little bit splitty. Knit 1, slip the marker across because that's the end of the repeat, and then I'm going to do a knit 2 together, knit 1, yarn over, and then I'm just going to knit the last 2. So I'm going to do row 12. And then on row 13, I'm going to show you something slightly different. So we're on row 13. And I'm just going to show you on the chart. Row 13 and row 5, so row 5 and row 13. So if you look, so basically up to row 8 and from row 9 to 16, it's basically the same pattern. It's just it's moved half a repeat over. So you can see here the first 8 rows, you got the decreases kind of in the center, and you got the yarn overs over to one side. Then from row 9 to 16, you got the decrease yarn overs in the center, and the decreases going off to one side. So you can see that center SK2PO here. That's between those 2 yarn overs. Now, on most lace patterns, unless you want to increase the number of stitches you have, for each time you have a yarn over, you will have a decrease. And most of the time, those yarn overs, those decreases will be on the same row. So if I have a yarn over on a row, I'll have a decrease on the same row. Sometimes you'll have a yarn over on one row and a decrease on a row on a later row. So it might be on the next wrong side row, it might be several rows later. But by the time you finish the repeat, you'll have the same number of stitches that you started with. Unless you're increasing like we are here for the edgings. On the edging, we were increasing to row 7, and then we're decreasing from row 9. So by the time we finish row 16, we got the same number of stitches that we needed before we started row 1. So we're increasing and then decreasing. So here on row 1 and row 9, the decrease is exactly next to the 2 yarn overs. So you can see in the repeat, we got 1, 2 yarn overs, and we got 2 decreases. Then we've got a yarn over and a decrease there. Row 3, we got 1, 2. So here the yarn decreases are 1 stitch in from the yarn over, and on row 5, there are 2 stitches in from the yarn over. You can see we've still got 2 decrease yarn overs there and 1 decrease in the middle. Then we've got a yarn over there and 1 decrease here. Now on row 13, you can see we've got the 2 yarn overs in the middle, and we got the double decrease, the SK2PO, to make up for those 2 yarn overs is over here at the end of the repeat. That means, and then we got another yarn over here. That means that if you, and you can see we got a decrease here. Now if I knitted and I didn't do that decrease, even though I've got 2 yarn overs and a decrease in the pattern repeat, because that decrease is kind of over to one side, it means that my pattern would be misaligned, wouldn't line up properly unless I put a decrease in front of here. That's why we've got a decrease here outside the pattern repeat. So that decrease makes up for that one, for that yarn over. Then we do that yarn over, and then we've got a double decrease, which makes up for that yarn over, and the second time I work that one. And then when I get to the end of the pattern repeat, and I've done my final pattern repeat, I have to add an extra yarn over here to make up for that decrease. I hope that makes sense. So let me do that row quickly for you. And the main thing to learn to read your knitting is to look at what you're doing, so you can see what different decreases look like, what different increases look like. Right, so now, actually I need to stop. So I'm going to slip on and knit 3. So you can see if you're using a marker to mark the beginning of the repeat, I'm actually going to knit 2 together with the stitch before the marker and the stitch after the marker. Now I can slip that one, take the marker off, put that one back, knit 2 together. It's a little bit tedious. So what I do is I put my needle in to those 2 stitches just for a normal knit 2 together, but I make sure that I do it below the marker. So I'm not going through the marker like that, because that wouldn't be a good idea. I'm going in below the marker so that it doesn't interfere with the marker, and I knit those 2 stitches together. Then I take the first stitch off, slip the marker, take the second stitch off. Then I got the knit 2 together and the marker in the correct place. So let me show you that again. Okay, so I stop 1 stitch before the marker, and I'm going to knit 2 stitches together either side of that marker. So put your needle into those 2 stitches, but make sure you don't go through the marker. So if you have very big markers, it might be difficult, but marker is here, and I've gone in below the marker. Then I'm going to knit those 2 stitches together, and then I'm going to take the first stitch off. So I just knock that off with my thumb, slip the marker across, and take the second stitch off. So I got my knit 2 together and my marker. And now looking at my knitting, I know because I want my yarn over either side of that center knit one, I'm going to have to knit 2. Yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, then I'm going to knit 2, and now my SK2PO, so I got on the row 11, I did an SSK knit 1, knit 2 together. On this row, my SK2PO is going to take in those 3 stitches, because I can see on the chart that that's it's kind of centered over those stitches. So I'm going to slip 1, knit 2 together, pass the slip stitch over. So I can see now that that kind of comes into like a triangle shape, those decreases. Then I'm going to knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2. I thought I'd done something wrong. So I'm going to slip on, so I got my SK2PO, so I'm going to slip the first one, knit those 2 together, and I'm not going to move the marker. So the 2 of those stitches are before the marker and 1 stitch is after the marker. So I've slipped 1, and then I'm going to knit 2 together without moving the marker. You can see the marker is kind of, I'm putting my needle in below the marker, knit those 2 together, slip that first one off, then I'm actually going to take the slip stitch over, then I'm going to put my marker across and then take the second stitch off. So you just got to remember that you slip the second stitch off as well. So I got my SK2PO and my marker. Then I'm going to knit 2 and yarn over and knit 2. Okay, I'm not going to do the final row, row 15. But you can see now how that's starting to look like a leaf shape. This is a very, very common pattern, fairly easy to do. It's kind of considered one of the kind of beginner lace patterns. If you're worried about doing it on your shawl, put a lifeline in before you start, or even knit a little swatch like this and just practice the stitch pattern. So just cast on 8 stitches in the pattern repeats, perhaps 16 stitches, plus a couple of stitches either side, and then just knit through the repeat a couple of times, just to make sure you're happy and you know all the stitches. Or just put a lifeline in on your shawl and then you'll be fine. So let me know if you have any problems or any questions, and I'll see you next time.